Hello and welcome to the first video. This is going to be based on multiple series of videos. The first one and the most important is to really understand what we are trying to do. We have two entities in the real world. One of them is author and the other is book. And how are we going to create a relational database that is going to be useful in order to access the many books that is written by one author, or if the same book is being written by multiple authors. So the nature of the relationship is really based on many to many. And as we all know, the many to many relationship is not being or it cannot be linked directly in a relational database. So we have to really find a way of doing this. But before we do this, we have to really first of all think about those attributes that is going to be pertaining to each of those entities. And we're going to make it as simple as possible in order to illustrate the idea behind building the relationship. So I'm not really worrying about solving a business problem as much as to understand the technical and the implementation side of how to link a many-to-many relationship. So this is my first entity. It's going to be turned eventually when we're trying to implement it as a table. We all know a table is a relation. Also, it's a file. It's going to be a representation of the entity in the real world that is author. And as you notice, we always name our table with the prefix TBL in order to distinguish that from other type of object such as form, queries, and report. I decided to include the very first attribute, the author ID, with text in 5 characters to indicate this is the primary key for the author. As we all know, primary key is going to be very unique value. No two authors going to have the same value. And we're going to make it as simple as possible. We have author first name and author last name. And the reason for me the reason for putting those separate is much easier to concatenate them later in a query than trying to really split them from each other. And we're going to use email also as another attribute. So the author's table is going to have 4 attributes, and author ID is going to be that primary key. We have to keep that in mind because we're going to really use that later in the linking of the two tables. The second table is table book. We're going to choose an ISBN number, which is the international standard book number, and we're going to make it 10 characters based on text. We're going to have this is the primary key, so there's no two books will have the same ISBN number. We have title for the book, subject, price. It's going to be currency. Number of pages is going to be an integer numerical value. Hard copy is going to be yes or no. And the date of publication, or the date, let's go ahead and stick with the date of publication. Is going to be, of course, a date. We're going to make it a short date. It's going to be a month, day, and year. So how do we actually will be able to link, how we are going to be able to link those two entities? As we said earlier, there's no direct link between many-to-many relationship. So in order to do that, we have to really create a conjunction table. The conjunction table is going to really take the primary key from the author table, and it's going to really create it as a foreign key in the third table. It's going to take also the international serial book number as the primary key for the book, and it's going to really add it to the junction table, and that's going to be the foreign key. And of course, we could have another attribute, the ID, meaning to keep track of the number of the records. But what we need to know really here is the fact that we're going to be using each one of those the primary key in the one table as the foreign key in order to allow us to link the two tables. But ironically here, we're going to have another purpose for having these two keys together as one unit, as a composite key, and we're going to treat it as the primary key. You would ask me, what are you talking about? I mean, we just use those primary keys from the one table inside this junction table in order to treat them as the foreign key, and you're telling me these are going to be the primary key? I will tell you yes. There is no need really to mix the two thoughts together. Each one of those keys are going to have its own purpose of doing the actual link. However, both of them going to work jointly as a composite key in order to form a primary key for each record we enter in the junction table. Why is that? Because there is no way we could have the same author ID and the same ISBN number being repeated for any more than one entry, or for any two entries. We cannot have two books that have the same author ID and the same ISBN number, because that's going to lead to redundancy, and we're going to really, that's one of the anomalies that we're trying to avoid having to deal with when it comes to handling databases. So both of them are combined going to be the primary key. Each one of them is going to be the foreign key. It's very, very important things to really understand this before we continue. In the next video, we're going to really establish or implement the very first table, which is going to be the author, and hopefully we might still do the book if we have the time. We're going to be able to really create the relationship. My advice before you even think about the relationship is to do every sort of thinking that you need to do in relation to how you're going to enter the primary key in the author table, and how you're going to enter the primary key for the book table. You need to understand what type of data or metadata is going to be pertaining to those primary key, or any other type of data. Metadata is mean the data about the data. For example, price is going to be currency. Subject is going to be a text, but how long it's going to be. Is it going to be 30 characters or is it going to be 50 characters? Would you like to have the subject also for as a lookup wizard, where you have a choice to really select whether it's a scientific or literature or whatever is that subject is going to be? So that's another thing you might have to think about. Again, this is not really the major reason for talking or recording these videos. The main reason is really to establish the relationship and get you through the database as easy as possible. Thank you for watching, and we're going to see you in the next video, which is going to really start building the relationship between the author and the book as many-to-many relationship, using, of course, Microsoft Access as the database management system. Thank you.